What's going down, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. You already see what's going down in the title. I'm really gonna give y'all the full breakdown today. But before we even dive into the video, I just wanna keep it real with you guys. You know what I'm saying? In no way am I making this video to persuade anybody by any means. I feel like there's already this perception, this narrative of, people who are plant-based and them just being ultra preachy and just trying to portray their lifestyle choices on other people. That is not the purpose of this video. I feel like I really just want to make this video for the people who are maybe curious, for someone who has done it for an extended period of time, just want to learn a little bit about the choices that motivated this lifestyle decision and some of the pros, some of the cons. And yeah, I just want to keep it all the way 100 with y'all. I don't want to gas it up by any means. I don't want to make it out to be like what it's not. I just want to be as real as possible. So yeah, man, let's dive straight in. So as y'all can see in the title, man, I've been plant-based for 4 years now. I didn't go plant-based overnight, when it first happened. I was cutting things out slowly. It all really started with the pandemic. Of course, during the pandemic, we all had so much time on our hands, and I was just in this state of crazy hunger and desire to learn more about myself and the world around me. So I'm just posing a bunch of questions, don't really know who to ask. I just started doing a bunch of research on the questions that I had. During that time, I had no interest in the plant-based lifestyle at all whatsoever. I was just looking for ways to improve my health. That was the bottom line. That's what sparked all the interest. It was just me wanting to better my life and find ways to become a better version of myself. Of course, through lifestyle, but of course, with the foods that I'm consuming. And there's just so much variation, so many different opinions on what the best diet is, what the most healthy diet is. And you oftentimes, you don't know who to listen to. So I kind of just wanted to gather in all the information myself and decide what my perspective was going to be based on the research that I did. So, I started doing a bunch of research, university studies, podcasts, documentaries. But I told myself, because I was consuming so much new information, I feel like a lot of people go into that new information with a biased mindset, and that is not what I wanted to do by any means. So before each piece of information or content that I consumed, I brought myself to a very neutral point of view. That way I could assess it logically as opposed to, maybe what I wanted to hear. Because at that time, I was eating everything, So of course, hearing negative things about your current lifestyle and your current health choices, it hurts, man. It just gets uncomfortable, right? So I had to bring myself to a neutral standpoint before consuming any type of new information. Otherwise, I would just have a closed mind and I wouldn't be able to cultivate a new perspective. So I did a lot of research, as I said, but I think when I started to get really engaged was when I started to watch these Netflix documentaries. So one of the documentaries that I watched was Game Changers. So this documentary was really interesting because it completely changed my perspective on plant-based diets, especially athletes and how they can thrive on them, because it addressed the myth that you can't really build muscle or, be strong by any means without meat. And of course, as a man, the whole concept of protein, there's such a big discussion behind it. So Game Changers really addressed a lot of the key questions that I had as far as, being fit, building muscle, and what have you, right? What the Health was also a really great documentary. This one dives deep into the health risks that are associated with consuming animal products and consuming too much of them. And of course, the role of big corporations and how they mislead us within the meat industry. Another one that I checked out was Seaspiracy, which highlights the environmental damages caused by commercial fishing and just how we're destroying our oceans for profit, essentially. Each one of these films brought a new layer of understanding, not just about my own health, but about the world that we're living in. Like I said, I feel like my curiosity started with health, but then as I started to dive a little bit deeper into the subject, I started to learn a little bit more about what it means in its totality as far as, the environment and the world we live in and whatnot. So it began with health, but then it's just started to open my eyes to other things. So one of the key concepts I feel like I've learned over the past 4 years is that it's not just about cutting out meat per se, but not being a part of the toxicity within the animal agriculture industry. I feel like there's a lot that goes on that most people just don't know about. I didn't know about it, The average person would just say I like meat too much. But that's what you don't understand, bro. It's the meat that you're consuming is not the meat that our ancestors were consuming. It's completely different, completely. The way that these animals are bred and raised, the conditions that they're living in. I'm sure most people don't know this, but 80% of antibiotics that come out of pharmaceutical companies actually are fed to animals. Although you may not be taking antibiotics directly, you are indirectly consuming them through the meat that you consume, right? Because they have to feed them these antibiotics regularly. Otherwise, these animals will get diseases. They won't be able to profit off of their bodies, when they slaughter them, because they're just living in horrible conditions. It's very important that they feed them low quality food, fatten them up as quick as possible, feed them antibiotics to ensure that they don't get sick or don't have any diseases, so they could still put them in the market. And then, fatten them up as quickly as possible so then you can maximize the amount of profit per kill. So it's just the furthest thing from natural versus our ancestors back in the day, right? Like when they went out to eat meat, they would go and hunt the animals themselves within the wild, which is, again, in my mind, two completely different methods and forms of consuming meat. The meat that our society consumes nowadays is like facilitated, automated meat, that is just the furthest thing from natural. And again, like I was just trying to broaden my perception of the healthiest lifestyle choices. And then once I learned about the concept of artificial insemination, that was just really messed up to me. So if you don't know what artificial insemination is, it's basically when you extract the semen from a bull and you breed cows artificially, right? So you're essentially going against Mother Nature. They're not being bred naturally. They're breeding them just so they can slaughter them. That shook me up a little bit because that's kind of freaky when you think about it. Like, it's one thing to, hunt an animal in the wild who has been bred naturally, they exist naturally, like their existence is natural, right? Whereas you are extracting the semen from a bull in a laboratory or whatever it is, and then you breed them yourself so then you can slaughter them, and then you continue to do this process over and over and over again. I was like, damn, that cannot be good for Mother Nature, right? Like, it can't be. Like, that just sounds like super messed up to me. So that was, again, like one of the things that I just started to like take in during that time when I was just on a very neutral standpoint. You know what I'm saying? So after learning all of that stuff is when I discovered Dr. Sebi. So for those of y'all who don't know who Dr. Sebi is, he was a herbalist and a natural healer who promoted plant-based living and just focused on alkalizing the body and avoiding toxins so then the body can heal itself naturally. So I would say this is where the most drastic shift in awareness took place. When I started hearing this man talk, I was just like, the knowledge was coming in very quickly after all the information that I consumed prior, because Dr. Sebi really emphasized the fact that many of today's most common diseases are caused by mucus-forming foods, and that an alkaline diet can essentially prevent illness. It really had me thinking, like so many people are so dependent on medicine, but when I asked myself from like a broader scale, as far as, whatever it is that you believe in, I like to say the universe, God, Jesus, or like whatever it is that you make sense of this illusion that we're all living in, how could the medicine, quote unquote, not already exist? Of course, medicine that you get from pharmaceutical companies, it's man-made, right? It's not a part of nature. And that was something that he really just brought to light for me and just helping me understand. So as I said, that's really when my perspective of food really started to shift, because I started to look at food as medicine as opposed to, I didn't really have a perception of food before. It was just like, just don't get hungry. Like, you just don't want to feel hungry. Like such low consciousness. You know what I mean? I feel like I just started to think on a much broader scale, and like I just had such a shift in my awareness. So it went beyond food at that point, and that was really remarkable for me, because I really felt like I was growing myself and expanding my perception of the world, which is what my goal was ultimately, like just to grow myself, right? And it's, of course, it starts with health. Health is wealth, So I felt like that's really where it started. Modern society has adopted this belief that we need medicine to heal, and we put trust in those who provide us with that guidance to heal us, doctors. It just started going so much deeper at that point. And that's when, like, sleepless nights, of just research, like just reading and watching and listening. Like, I just wanted to continue to broaden this perspective that I had and sharpen it so, I could really come to a consensus. And it just had me asking so many more questions. Like, why would pharmaceutical companies encourage us to heal ourselves with nature? Why would they do that? Because if you were to do that, what would that mean for that industry, right? Because you can't put a patent on nature. A patent is a type of intellectual property that gives its owner the legal right to exclude others from selling it, right? So you can put a patent on a formula that you create yourself, in a laboratory, but you can't put a patent on ginger root or turmeric you know, or sarsaparilla, like all these different herbs and roots. Like you can't do that. Whereas something that you've made in the lab that may cure somebody temporarily, how do you prevent the problem so it doesn't happen again? They're not gonna send us down that direction. And that's when I kind of like went down a bit of a dark path, because it was just like, damn, this shit is cruel. You know what I'm saying? It was just like realizing all of these different things, but I could go deep, you know what I'm saying? But then it really made me understand that they want to be the ones to heal us. Like it has to be them, you know, not God per se, because if they are the ones to heal you, and in your mind, they are the reason that you have been healed, you develop dependence on them, which then gives them more power in a sense, right? Which is just super interesting to me. So it's not solely about healing the individual, the patient. It's about mutual benefit to a certain degree, right? Like, yes, you're healed, but I'm also, you know, getting credit for healing you. And then of course, like there's so much conspiracy. There are so many different things that people have talked about and brought up. RIP to Nipsey Hussle. For those of y'all that don't know Nipsey Hussle, he was a rapper who passed a few years back. Super inspirational and motivational, like beyond music, like just in entrepreneurship and health and, you know, self-development, all these different things. Huge inspiration in my life personally. He was actually in the process of creating a documentary about Dr. Sebi. Okay, and for those of y'all that don't know, Dr. Sebi has said to have, you know, committed suicide or whatever it was when he was in jail, because he was making all these false claims, so that they said, right? And he was put in prison for him, and he died during that time. And Nipsey Hussle was actually creating a documentary about his legacy and all the things that he was teaching and all the people that he had healed. And it was just really interesting that before the documentary came out of Dr. Sebi, who was assassinated, Nipsey Hussle was then assassinated as well. They were, of course, sharing similar messages, talking about similar things. So again, it's just interesting to me. But then, yeah, man, that leads me into my next point, which was fitness. Fitness was obviously huge for me, because all my life, all I ever heard was, you know, if you're a man, you got to eat that meat. Like that's just what it was. And that was the belief that I had adopted. And, you know, you see all these dudes, you know, bodybuilders and whatnot, like that's what they consume. They consume a lot of chicken, you know, chicken and rice. Like that's just what it was, you know. But after all the research that I had done, I was open to giving the lifestyle a try. I wasn't like making any like bold long-term moves, but I was open to giving it a try. I'm gonna keep it 100. Like I was skeptical. I didn't know what was gonna happen. And I was a little bit worried, especially with like the whole protein aspect of it, right? Because that's what our society puts so much focus on and importance on. It's like you need protein, right? So I was tripping at first, especially because the lifestyle was so new. I had no idea what I was gonna consume. I had no idea what to eat, you know? But once I actually started to find my rhythm, I definitely started to get stronger, and I was very surprised, and I was happy though. But when I say like I was getting stronger, it was primarily like calisthenics training. You know, I was never big on like doing weights. Like I did some weight training back in the day, but it wasn't like my primary form of training. But in regards to like my calisthenics training, that's when I really started to see a lot of improvements. My pull-ups started going up like drastically. My chin-ups were going up really well as well. I started to become more flexible. All these like just natural forms of body training. It's always been like my preferred method of training. So this is where I saw a lot of improvements, and I started to feel a little bit more motivated with the lifestyle. And the reason why I've always just been more into body weight exercises is that I find that the strength is longer lasting. You know, like when I was in the weight room, like I would be like looking bigger and stuff, you know, but if I were to take a week off the gym, I would lose everything. Like literally that's how it felt. It was like, damn, like I feel so deflated. Y'all remember that episode of SpongeBob when he would like blow up his arms, like just trying to put on the front, just trying to impress Sandy? That's how I felt. I felt like my muscles would literally just deflate. Whereas like if I take a little bit of time off from like doing push-ups and pull-ups and crunches and stuff, I don't find that like I lose the strength in the same way. You know, like I feel like it still stays with me to a degree, which is why it's always been like my preferred way of training. But y'all, in regards to like the whole protein aspect of it, man, like I always had this conception that if you're consuming the right amount of protein, you have to feel very full and you have to feel heavy. Like that's just what I believed. Like that's just what I saw other people doing, what I heard other people talking about. But that is the furthest thing from the truth. You can get more than enough protein and not feel heavy or full. Actually, you can get like more than enough protein and feel very light, which is what I've experienced in my own life. So it's just really interesting. Nimai Delgado is actually a plant-based bodybuilder who proves this too. You know, he was in the Netflix documentary Twin Experiment. And in this Netflix documentary, they basically put twins on a plant-based diet one of them is on a plant-based diet and then the other one is on a carnivore diet, and then they test to see how their bodies perform, what the differences are in their strength and, you know, their overall health levels and whatnot. That's a really interesting documentary to check out if you're interested. I won't spoil what the end result was, but check it out if you want to learn a little bit more. But the overall consensus is that protein and the amount of importance that we put on it is simply a myth as far as where the primary source of protein should come from. Yes, you can get it from meat, but you can get it from so many other sources as well. So that's what I have now learned from experience. At first, it was just like from the content I was consuming, you know, and the research I was doing. But now, like, I've learned that at firsthand, like, you can build muscle on a plant-based diet, you know? And this is something Dr. Bobby also talks about too. For those of y'all that don't know Dr. Bobby, he's very big in like the Black community. He's a Black doctor who was actually a registered physician. Like, he was a doctor, and he left his practice because he was tired of prescribing people medicine, right? And now he has created his own community and his own following, just like educating people on like a plant-based diet and the benefits of it. And seriously, in regards to fitness though, the one last thing that I will add is that I've found that my recovery periods are like way faster. You may still feel sore from time to time, but your body gets rid of inflammation and soreness a lot faster. That is definitely a huge pro, but we'll get more into that later. The next point that I really wanted to get into was the cost of plant-based eating. There is this narrative that eating a plant-based diet is like super expensive, and yes and no. I feel like there is a misconception, so I really wanted to touch base on this. If you're eating out at plant-based restaurants, yes, without a doubt, it costs more. I'm actually out here in Thailand right now, and in Thailand, like the Western foods, plant-based foods, they cost more. They do at restaurants. If you're like eating a diet with no restrictions or whatever, you can literally get meals for like less than $1. Like it's like that, you know? Again, a plant-based diet in Thailand is still very cheap, but you gotta understand, it costs more in restaurants because they have real ingredients that they're using. And if they don't utilize these ingredients within a certain time frame, they will rot, they will spoil, and they will have to throw them out. So they cost more in that sense. Like the preparation process and the creativity, in my opinion, is just held to a higher standard at these plant-based restaurants. But with that being said, if you are consuming plant-based foods at home, it is way cheaper. Like, it's no debate. It is no debate. You just gotta know what you're consuming. In a restaurant, different game, different scene, I totally get it. But if you're preparing the foods yourself, it is way cheaper. You just gotta be disciplined as far as like preparing your foods, purchasing the right foods, planning the meals and whatnot. But if you can like really stay on top of that and you know, find your rhythm, find your flow, it is simple. You know, some easy and affordable plant-based staples include like lentils, chickpeas, mushrooms, rice, oats. Although I prefer buckwheat over oats because they're 100% gluten-free. Buckwheat is solid because it has like a lot more fiber and protein in there. But yeah, those are just some staples for y'all to consider. Next point I want to get into, nutrients. This is a really interesting one because I've heard so many mixed stories about deficiencies and lack of nutrients. A lot of vegans that I've met, you know, recently are very passionate about this lifestyle, almost to a point where like they identify themselves with this way of living almost like to a fault, you know? And I say that to say, you know, there's a lot of emphasis on what isn't being eaten as opposed to what is being eaten. It's like, okay, I'm not having meat, I'm not having dairy, right? But like, what are you consuming? You know, some of them just literally just be eating like just bread and like, you know, maybe some salads, some vegetables, whatever. It's good that like you're cutting those out for your own reasons, but what are you consuming, right? You still have to be very mindful about that to make sure that you are getting the right nutrients. And of course you can get all the nutrients that you need on a plant-based diet. You just got to know what you're doing, you know? I've heard of several different people who went on a plant-based diet and, you know, started to deal with anemia, it became anemic. If you don't know what that is, it just basically means you don't have enough red blood cells in your system, and you start to deal with like intense fatigue where, you know, from what I've heard, it's just like not fun at all, like very scary, honestly. But again, those same people that were dealing with that were focusing more on what they weren't consuming as opposed to what they were consuming, which is why they started to deal with all the negative things that can come out of this lifestyle choice if you don't know what you're doing, you know? Bro, but that was just like me too. Like I said, early on in the journey, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just trying to figure it out. But I was willing to learn and I was willing to experiment. So as far as like, you know, what it was that I was consuming then, I was eating, bro, like a lot of fake meats, a lot of the, you know, the Beyond Meat, the Ives, you know, tofu, which I'm like really against now. I feel like I won't even get into tofu right now. But now I've really stepped my game up, you know what I'm saying? Like I consume a lot of legumes, which are like, you know, chickpeas, lentils. I consume sea moss. If you don't know what sea moss is, look into sea moss. That's some of the most nutrient dense things on our planet, you know? Buckwheat, like I said, mushrooms, black and red rice, quinoa, teff. Like I'm Ethiopian, bro. Like teff is some of like the best that you can get. And now I'm actually gluten-free. I've been gluten-free for the past few years as well. I think been plant-based for 4 years. Probably gluten-free for like 3 years for a lot of reasons. Maybe I'll make a separate video on that if you want me to drop one on gluten, things that I've learned about it, my experience with cutting out gluten, some of the benefits and why I will remain gluten-free. Let me know in the comments below and maybe I'll make some content on that. But yeah, now, like I said, I've just really started to find my rhythm and I understand what agrees with my body, with the human body, and what it needs to perform at its best, you know? But now we can just straight up just get into the pros and cons, because I know some of y'all probably just been waiting on the pros and cons, so let's get into the pros and the cons, you know what I'm saying? So the first pro, which is honestly a little hard to describe clearly on the front end, is awareness, okay? This might be a little hard for some of y'all to grasp. Maybe some of y'all already plant-based and you can relate, but natural awareness, as I started to really take care of my gut health and I was just eating a very clean diet, I'm not eating processed foods, it was like my awareness was gradually raising naturally. You know what I'm saying? Like I wasn't reading any books or consuming like new information, but I just started to intuitively like learn so much about myself and the world. And it seemed like my consciousness was just raising at such a pace that like I just couldn't comprehend. I was just like, wow, like I understand this now. You know what I'm saying? And for me, like awareness is the greatest form of intelligence. So to have my awareness grow at the speed that was very powerful for me and a huge pro in my mind. Next pro would be, of course, better digestion. You know, having the solid bowel movements is like great because you can feel more relaxed throughout the day and you just have a better mood overall. You know what I'm saying? I feel like digestion is one that we cannot undermine by any means. Next pro would be stability of my mood. That one's an interesting one, right? Because I feel like that says enough, you know? To have a more consistent mood throughout your days is invaluable to me, because if you have better energy, higher energy, it translates into all other areas of your life, because it begins with your health, but then, you know, you perform better in the gym, you perform better in your business, you perform better within your relationships because you have more energy to give. You have a more stable, positive energy, right? So to me, that's invaluable. That is a very important pro that I've grown to really appreciate and love every day. Next pro would be higher energy. I feel like I have more fuel. You know, I used to have a lot of like midday crashes from not consuming the right foods. I don't feel that at all anymore. I have much better sleeps as well, which could be its own pro, you know, much better sleeps. Another pro would be what I touched on earlier in regards to fitness, right? Like just faster recovery times, so I don't feel sore for as long. Oftentimes, like I have to like refrain myself from going to the gym because like I could just go every day, but it's like I don't need to go every day. You know, I should still give my body like that rest, but because I don't feel like stiff and sore, I feel like bro, like I could literally go every day. But for me, usually 4 days a week is like my sweet spot, you know, going to the gym. And then as far as the cons go, I feel like number one con would be like finding food sometimes, you know, like when you're in the grocery stores and you have to like read the labels, especially out here, bro. Like I'm out here in Asia right now. Like we were in Japan, Philippines, and now we're in Thailand. So, you know, just having to go out of your way to like ensure that you know what you're consuming, right, is like a little bit harder, especially when the labels aren't in English. It's one thing to go to the grocery store and like have to read all the labels and all the ingredients, but like to have to like bring out Google Translate and like, you know, try and scan it and, you know, ask the people in the restaurants, like, can I, like, is this plant-based? You know, it's, it can be a little tedious sometimes, a little annoying, just a little bit. But that's one of them things that you just, you know, you get used to with time. The next con would be, I would say, just like eating with other people. Sometimes it can be a bit of an inconvenience if you're with other people. You know, you're the only ones who are plant-based. Everyone else is eating meat. Maybe you're going to someone's place for dinner and they have to prepare food just for you. I mean, I don't feel bad no more. You know, like at first, like I felt like a little uncomfortable. I was like, damn, like I feel a little bad, but you know, it's whatever now. You know what I mean? Like I'm cool with it. But in the beginning stages, it's definitely an adjustment. Another con would be, yeah, just like what I was saying before, as far as like going out to restaurants and it being pricier, but I have no problem paying for quality. I'm all about the quality. If it's gonna, you know, be the fuel that I need, you know, that my body needs and appreciates, I'm all for paying for the quality. So for most people, it'd probably be a con, but it's cool for me. And I love supporting the restaurants who really, you know, put an emphasis and value on nourishment, you know, not just like taste and flavor, but you're going to love the taste, but you're also going to love how you feel when you leave. That's what I appreciate. So maybe a con for most people, but I don't really care. You know, I care about my body the most. So, you know, I know for most people, like everyone who has decided to go plant-based has like their own reasons for it, but I feel like in conclusion, it isn't just about cutting out meat or dairy, but it is about creating a lifestyle that supports a healthy mind and a healthy body, but also works hand in hand with our environment, especially considering the current state of our world, bro. And again, when we talk about like the animal agriculture industry and like where that meat is coming from, like that is the furthest thing for natural, you know, and it's not something that has to be so daunting. I feel like most people, again, have this idea that it has to happen like overnight. Like it's black or white. It's like, oh, I'm plant-based or I eat meat. Like, nah, bro. Like I said, like I was cutting things out slowly. Like I was vegetarian for the first bit. Like eggs was like the last thing that I cut out because I was eating eggs like every day. I cut out like red meat and then white meat and then fish and then eggs, you know? You can just literally start by just having like 1 or 2 plant-based meals a week, you know? Just find your flow. Because I get it. Like in the beginning, it's like, what do I buy at the grocery store? How do I prepare this? You know, just take small actionable steps, you know, if you are someone who is curious about this lifestyle, but I would definitely encourage it, you know what I'm saying? Just to learn a little bit more about it. And again, just open your mind. Cause I feel like having an open mind to things that you may perceive as uncomfortable only leaves room for growth, which is only a pro in my mind. But overall, y'all, I told y'all in the beginning of the video, I was gonna keep it all the way 100 with y'all. And I can genuinely say this is the happiest and the most energetic that I've ever felt in my life. 4 years into the game, you know what I mean? And I don't think I could ever go the other way now, you know, because my relationship with food has completely changed. I feel like I hold such a higher sense of gratitude for all the food that I consume in a way that I just couldn't before. Because again, like there's just such a higher level of awareness that has now come from learning all this new information, but also learning about what agrees with this body and how to work with it, you know, by providing optimal nourishment. But yeah, man, like for those of y'all that are like curious about this lifestyle, I do encourage you to maybe keeping an open mind to like checking out some of the documentaries that I mentioned earlier in the video. Maybe look into some of the work of Dr. Sebi too. Like that is really like eye-opening stuff. But I know a lot of people are afraid of consuming that type of information because they know it's going to raise their awareness. But again, there's a lot of growth that comes from it. And as I said, I believe that awareness is the greatest form of intelligence. So by denying yourself of a higher level of awareness, you're only doing yourself a disservice. Keep an open mind and, you know, just watch yourself constantly grow, you know, because your health is worth the effort. And just remember, y'all, like, I feel like this journey is very personal. Like you don't need to fit into a specific box. You know, it's just about trying to adapt and just trying to be better every day. And what we consume is a huge part of that. You know, you don't have to be labeled as a vegan or, you know, it's not black and white. Like you don't need to look at it that way. I didn't look at it that way, you know, when I first embarked on the journey, and like, you know, here I am, but it's about you at the end of the day. If you made it this far in the video, man, sending you so much love and positive energy. Of course, if you're consuming content like this, we are aligned to a degree. So man, I genuinely appreciate you making the time to chop it up with me and, you know, hear about the story, my journey, and what it's been thus far. Let me know in the comments below, like, of more content that you guys want to see and any suggestions that you have for the channel. I'm always looking forward to connecting with you guys, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your week. Sending y'all so much love, man. It is KT. I'll see y'all in the next video.